Hey everyone, welcome to the Canine Culture Podcast, where we talk about everything dog. Q&As with veterinarian professionals, rescue operators, everyday topics. We cover everything dog on this podcast. So make sure you subscribe to the Canine Culture Podcast on your favorite podcast platform, and make sure you're following us on social media on both Instagram and Facebook. Thanks again for listening. Now here's that next episode. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Canine Culture Podcast. This is your host, Brittany, and today we're going to talk about communicating with your dog. Now, before we even get started, I'm going to say, work with a trainer, work with a trainer, work with a trainer. Okay, got that out of the way. So let's talk about communicating with your dog. And you're probably thinking, I don't need to know this, or what else could there be? There's a lot, and we're just going to scratch the surface, kind of give you something to think about, maybe something to kind of look in for yourself, see if there's any bits and pieces of this that you could take. So let's start with why communication is so important to your dog. So you obviously cannot have an actual conversation with them. They cannot understand your body language. They cannot understand your expectations. And so being able to effectively communicate is essential to your relationship. It'll keep you happier. It'll keep your dog happier, less stress, better for everyone. So over the past few years, I've definitely learned a lot more about dog communication. There's so many different stories I could tell. One story or one thing that really sticks out is one of our dogs is going to be 15 years old soon. He went deaf maybe a year and a half ago. What was unique about this was that we didn't really know he was deaf until he was deaf. It happened pretty quickly. Clearly, he wasn't telling us like, hey, I can't really hear you. And then we just kind of figured it out. You know, we would yell for him in the yard. He wouldn't even look our way. And we were like, oh, is he ignoring us? And it kept happening enough where we realized he actually couldn't hear us. It was at that moment that I realized I wish that I would have worked on our communication with respect to hand signals, body language, different expressions, using different cues and tools and different things like that. Because now it's very hard to communicate with him. It's very hard to flag him to come in from going outside, or to flag him to go to his room when it's time for him to go to his room whenever we leave for the day. And so I myself have learned a lot about dog communication. And that's just one scenario. There's so many more. All right, so let's talk about how dogs communicate. So dogs obviously use body language quite a bit. Tail wagging, their ear posture, overall posture. They've got vocalizations, barking, whining, growling, facial expressions, eye contact, lip licking, yawning, scent communication. You know, different scents might communicate something to them. So keep that in mind when you are communicating with your dog. They communicate very differently than us. And so imagine if someone was trying to communicate with you and you just weren't able to pick up on any of it. That's how our dogs feel sometimes. So what can we do about it? How can we be better? So tone of voice. Using a consistent tone of voice or a particular tone, depending on what you're looking for, and being mindful of when that tone is used. So if you're using a particular tone when you are angry or frustrated, even if it's not at your dog, let's say you use that tone and you're using that even at them, they're going to start to pick up on, oh, okay, she must be mad about something, even if it's not something that they did. You see what I'm saying? Body movements. Our body movements mean something different to dogs than what we think. So one thing that I see all the time, and I'm guilty of it, is when we approach a dog and we take our hand to the top of their head. And a lot of dogs might jump down, put their head down. They might just kind of be caught off guard. So our body movement with that respect and how we are communicating with them, we're thinking like, oh, we're just greeting them. That's not necessarily what they think. The dog's vision isn't necessarily seeing that hand come in. So it could be jolting, it could be alarming, it could be surprising. Asking for a hug. People are like, oh my gosh, he knows that I'm asking for a hug. Eh, your dog might not know it's a hug. And so that reaching of the arms is a little bit different for every dog. It could be scary. They could be kind of confused by it. So just thinking about your body movements and being consistent. And that consistency comes with both body movements and commands. This is a huge one. Consistency, particularly with commands. Let's say you teach your dog down, and down could mean lay in a down position. Down could mean get off of the couch. If you train one way or the other, let's say I'm teaching a down as in lying down. If my dog jumps up on the couch and I say down, they don't probably know that I want them to get off of the couch, down off of the couch. They're thinking, oh, down, that means lay down. That's where you have a consistency issue. So if you do want to train those different commands, you might want to use different terminology. Or let's say you teach a sit and a down, and then you say sit down. That could be confusing. There's no consistency there. Another one I think of is come. So if you want your dog to have a come command, come here, come fast. Like if you add something to it, that could be complex. And that could be a word that you're using frequently in your house, depending on, I'm going to come over. Let's say you're on the phone and you say that a lot, or different ways you might say it. Using that word frequently in different contexts could be confusing, could miss that consistency cue. And then I've seen people have different commands for different obedience requirements or requests, I should say. Just keeping that as consistent as possible. And I really think if it's a word that you're not using frequently, that's a little bit better for training them so that it's not used in a confusing way. Another kind of last point on consistency, something you might have seen. You don't want your dog begging at the dinner table. You don't want them coming over and just sitting at your feet. Okay, you do that 4 nights out of the week. But then on Friday, you're like, come here, Scruffy, come get a piece of pizza. You give them a little bite of crust. That's not consistent. That's confusing. Monday through Thursday, they weren't supposed to come over. They weren't supposed to beg. But then on Friday, not only can they come over, but they're getting a piece of your pizza crust. Consistency. And then also, let's think about the role of positive reinforcement. Positive reinforcement can go a long way. This does not mean treat your dog every time they respond to your communication method, but this could be really helpful in making sure you're marking those actions. You're confirming that those are good. You're confirming that they've done what you've asked them to do. And maybe that's a treat. Positive reinforcement could also be pets if your dog likes to be pet. It could be toy time. So there's different ways to think about positive reinforcement and kind of understanding like what motivates your dog or what drives your dog, because they're not all going to be food driven or toy driven. And so that's just a consideration of how you can, communicate better with your dogs, learning more about them. All right, so let's take a quick break and let's do something kind of fun. So as we're discussing communication with your dogs, and I know we all wish we could talk to our dogs, right? So I recently learned about a company called Regal AI, and they build AI agents for brands, and they have a built-in AI dog hotline. So it's got 15 different breeds, the 15 most common breeds in the United States on the site. Each of them have their own phone number, and you can call and have a full conversation with them. So even though it's not communicating with your dog, it is the next best thing. So each breed kind of has their own little personality that's pretty fitting. And so I figured what better than to call one of the breeds and let's see how it goes.
Hola, I'm your Chihuahua. I just woke up from my beauty sleep and I'm so excited to be speaking human. I can't believe it. I took a nap and then woke up, and now all of a sudden I'm speaking to you. It's so crazy. It must be crazy for you too. Anyway, can you tell me what my name is? The name that you call me.
Your name is Burrito.
Oh, Burrito. Exquisite. The perfect name for a star like me. What have you always wanted to tell me now that we can chat?
I've always wanted to tell you that you have to stop barking at the squirrels outside.
Ah, but darling, those squirrels are my dramatic rivals. They simply cannot steal the spotlight like I do. Speaking of drama, what's the funniest thing I've ever done? I must know what makes my fabulous self so charming.
The funniest thing you've ever done would probably be not being graceful and falling off the bed.
Oh, mi amor, that was merely a theatrical exit to show my dramatic flair. Every star has their mishaps. Now, I must ask, have you been holding any delicious snacks lately? Please say yes.
No snacks. You're on a diet.
A diet? But darling, how can a diva shine without her gourmet treat? This is a true crisis. Maybe just a tiny morsel? Something worthy of my telenovela status, por favor?
Maybe some chicken liver as a treat.
Oh, chicken liver. My heart is racing like a telenovela plot twist. Yes. Let's have that exquisite treat together. After our delightful meal, can we cuddle and bask in the fabulousness of our bond?
Of course.
Oh, I've been talking too much again. Time to rest my voice and perfect my poses. Can't wait to chat again soon, darling, about our chicken liver soiree. Call me back anytime.
All right, so isn't that wild? So you could tell that was a Chihuahua. I wanted to call a Chihuahua for communication because I know a lot of people with small dogs want them to quit barking, and we wish we could tell them. So, as you can imagine, Regal AI builds AI agents for all kinds of businesses. If you want to learn more about what Regal AI can do for you or a friend's business, check them out at regal.ai. You can also try any of the 15 dog breed hotlines for yourself for free at regal.ai/dog. So, let's talk about misunderstandings with communicating with your dog. There's so many. Again, this episode could be hours long. It's not. Let's just talk about some of those misconceptions. So, number one, wagging tail. Someone sees a wagging tail, immediately they think, oh, that's a happy dog. They're super happy. Not always. A wagging tail is complex. It could be arousal, excitement, happiness. It could also mean fear, frustration, and depending on the context or other body cues, body language cues, it could even mean aggression. So you really want to understand that seeing one thing doesn't always equate to what you think it means, right? So with that wagging tail. So let's say they're wagging their tail, but they have their ears postured a particular way, as well as their body. Maybe they're licking their lips. That might indicate not a happy dog, might not want to engage with them or back off from whatever you're doing. Or a dog's wagging his tail, but he's barking, he's leaned forward, he has that hard stare. He might be aroused or frustrated, not happy. Another misconception is that dogs are naturally pack animals with a clear social order. Not always true. So the reality is that there are free-ranging dogs, whether it be a feral dog, a feral population, that maybe they don't form packs. Similarly, in your house, maybe you have an independent dog, they're not really forming that pack. And that's also like an expectation. We put these expectations on our dogs that they need to get along with every dog. And just like humans, we don't get along with every human. And so understanding that the social structure is not rigid, it's not black and white. There's definitely a continuum, just like there is with humans, with respect to the social order, how social they are, kind of that social hierarchy. So getting rid of that misconception. There is a misconception about guilt, that a submissive or an appeasement signal equals guilt. A lot of dogs don't necessarily feel guilt or not the way that we think about it. So you've seen it before. A dog rolls over on its back, and maybe it was after an undesirable behavior, and you're like, oh my gosh, they feel guilty for what they did. They feel guilty for getting into the food. That's not always true. That dog might be trying to just de-escalate the situation. They might be trying to avoid punishment. They're not necessarily acknowledging wrongdoing. And then another very big misconception is that dogs understand human language and body language. Dogs do not understand human language. They cannot comprehend complex conversations. They cannot always comprehend body language. At the end of the day, kind of like we were talking about earlier, dogs learn to associate certain words or phrases or certain actions or objects to particular things. That's where that consistency comes into place. So if you're sitting there having this full-on conversation with them and you truly think they understand you, they might be picking up a few of those common words, but they don't. So back to that hug example, come give me a hug. They probably have no idea what you're talking about. And a lot of lovable dogs might come up and greet you, show some affection, but they don't truly know what a hug is. So just understanding that the dogs do not fully understand you, and they don't always understand the expectations you're putting on them. So some tips for better training. Number one, teaching hand signals for commands. I said it earlier, and that was in the perspective of a senior dog who became deaf. There are so many different scenarios, though, where a hand signal is so helpful. And so when you're training them, associating a sit with a hand signal, a down with a hand signal. And that might look different in every house, depending on the different obedience that you have or level of obedience training, but it is important for those hand signals. And as it ties into hand signals, I've heard this from a few people, is training perhaps with lights. So I heard of someone who had a deaf dog. She had had one before, and so she kind of was prepared in case her dog went deaf. She actually trained them outside when it's dark. One color, shining the flashlight, meant go outside. One color meant come back in. Brilliant. Super easy. Could start using that from the beginning. Again, probably going to have to be consistent, but just something to think about. The other tip, number 2, is the importance of short, clear words. So it cannot be a full sentence command. You can't swap words interchangeably. Dogs don't know the synonyms. So you are looking for very short, clear words that you can use consistently for your commands. Number 3, using eye contact appropriately. I'm not going to talk too much on this one. And I would say this is very dog dependent and also depending on what you're working on. If you have concerns about eye contact or how to use it appropriately, I definitely say get a trainer, work with a dog trainer on that. And then the 4th tip, and we've had episodes on this, but socialization and doing that properly. So as we've said before, taking your dog to the dog park, throwing them in with a bunch of strange dogs, that's not quite socialization. And so just understanding what socialization might look like and where to start that process. So like I said, we've done some episodes on that, but that's just one of those tips that socialization is important. So would love to hear from some of you guys on what has improved your communication with your dogs. You know, I kind of talked about earlier how I wish I would have taught some hand commands to my dog that is deaf. On the flip side of that, I can think of a success story for me and how I improved communication by working with dog trainers. And that was using consistent commands. So going outside. One of my dogs was trained with inside. That means come inside. One of my dogs was trained with come. In a perfect world, I wish I could go back and make that consistent across the board for the 2 of them. But I do use a consistent term depending on what dog it is associated with. Whereas prior to working with a trainer, the one dog, I would just say like, come inside, get in the house, time for dinner. All these random phrases that he had no idea what I was asking of him. He's just out in the yard like, what does this crazy lady want? Because now she's saying something different. And so being able to flip my gears and just use the word inside, game changer. Game changer. He knows exactly what that means. And it is very easy to communicate and it is very clear. So again, would love to hear from you guys. Feel free to comment, send an email. As always, thank you guys for listening to the Canine Culture Podcast. Would love for you to follow and subscribe and find us on social media. Thank you and talk to you next week. Thank you for tuning in to the Canine Culture Podcast. Please make sure you subscribe to the Canine Culture Podcast on your favorite podcast platform and make sure you're following us on social media. If you have any recommendations, any topics that you'd like to hear, if you know of any guests that would be good for the show, or if you yourself want to be a guest, please reach out to us. Send us an email at canineculturepodcast@gmail.com or send us a direct message on social media. Thank you for listening, and please share this with any of your dog-loving friends.